The Crescent Moon Club, in association with Cyclops Entertainment, in conjunction with MP Productions and ABT presents Omnibus Unlimited, a roundtable discussion of provocative issues. Hello again, everyone. I'm Laurence, Nobile, independent researcher and host of Omnibus Unlimited. Tonight, we begin our third episode, in which we tie up the loose ends of our second episode concerning alien races and how human civilization began here on this planet. With me to discuss these topics are Tom Murray, psychic healer and medical technician from the Columbia House Associates. Tom, why don't you open it up for us?
Good evening, Larry. How are you?
Also with us tonight is our producer of Omnibus Unlimited, John Horrigan. John, good evening.
Good evening, Larry. Thanks a lot. Nice to be here.
Also with us is Dan Murray, independent researcher from Berlin, Massachusetts. Dan, good to have you here tonight.
Good to see you, Larry.
On our last show, gentlemen, we spoke about alien races populating this planet to some degree and seeding this planet with what we now understand to be the human race. Dan, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. The first is, have you yourself ever seen any UFOs? Have you had a close encounter, Dan? And if so, can you explain it?
Yes, I was very young. It was very frightening, and I was very afraid of it for a long time. And I can only say that I wrote it off personally myself at the time as being a weird type of plane that I didn't understand. I was probably about 5. And I've seen them again since then. But to get into what Tom Murray was saying before, we were discussing before the show, I had met a good friend of mine in Berlin's daughter. I always felt kind of attached to her, like I had something in common with her. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know the girl. She's married and kids and everything. But I always enjoyed being with her and talking to her, and I felt like there was something connected to us. And I came to find out from her mother that when she was about 5, and her mother was driving this girl, and they had an encounter. So about the same age that it happened to me, it happened to this girl. And I haven't spoken to this girl about it presently because she's pregnant, and I want to wait till that's over with. But it seems strange how when you start talking to someone who's been through a sighting or an encounter of some type, you feel something in common before you even realize that you know the other person has seen the same thing. So, when Tom comes in from the psychic point of view, I don't understand that thing. I'm trying to tie together what happened on this planet and what we need to do next. So I don't get into the psychic field, but I have enough to do on my own. But I understand it because I've experienced it. I can't explain it, but I understand what he means by that. On the other question that you had for me from the last show on genetics, I'm strictly from the theory of Professor Shockley, who was one of the United States' greatest scientists, most brilliant, and he was shut up by the U.S. government and allowed to continue experimentations. The computer age is completely because of Dr. Shockley's work. And his theory that we were not of the same races and that genetics was involved was why he was shut up. He said all men were not the same, and all races were not. I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but, we have our differences and our own strengths.
Okay, so you're saying, and this goes back to last show, the computers that were the size of small buildings are now the size of a pocket calculator. And you're saying that there is no way that such a transition could have happened between the 50s and the 90s without some outside help.
We can't balance the budget. I mean, how on earth are we going to do something like that? Well, I mean, let's face facts here. We, this country, New York, couldn't eat if it wasn't for the mafia. So, you're going to tell me that, and I was in the computer industry for 6 years, that these guys are inventing all these great things. They don't have the brain power. You'd burn out first.
Our producer, John Horrigan, here of Omnibus Unlimited, is frothing at the mouth to say something. John?
Yeah, Dan, that would explain why technology increases exponentially, whereas intelligence increases arithmetically.
Exactly. Everyone talks about Einstein and how brilliant he was.
Was Einstein an alien?
No, definitely not. What he was a guy who could not understand mathematics, so he invented his own. I never could understand many mathematics, so I invented my own, that I use my own abilities. I can't stand algebra, don't understand it. We're talking about a planet here, okay, where we have all these mathematics that we force kids to learn in school, and yet pi is not an exact number. It goes on forever. In other words, these morons haven't figured out the exact way to measure a circle yet. We thought we were so great in technology, and I remember watching the space shuttle go up and blow up, and I said, if we're so great in math and in algebra and all these things, how come the space shuttle just blew up? They calculate these things ahead of time. It's a simple matter of math, isn't it?
Well, aren't you being a little hard on us? I mean, Tom Murray, our resident psychic healer, is flagging me. Tom, what do you have to say about that?
Well, from a non-psychic viewpoint, Larry and Dan, the idea is, I believe the shuttle blew up because engineers that were studying the problem and noticed that there were problems. When they talked to their higher-ups, the higher-ups said, don't bother us with these details, we're making money. The shuttle O-rings were not tested with the shuttle in an upright position. They were tested with the shuttle lying down. And that, again, is one of my favorite themes here. It's human greed, human desire to look good and to stick to a schedule instead of opening your mind and being open to the message that's coming through.
Well, that's about right. I mean, Dan, we can compute, we can add and subtract, and I am a math teacher myself. I taught mathematics at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and mathematics is simply a language. It is the language of nature. Mathematics is what explains fire and heat and energy and mass, and mathematics was invented by human beings, and as such it has its faults. So I agree with you on that, and I can see where Einstein would have problems with mathematics, as many of my students have had, and so he invented his own. And the method that we taught mathematics was the Socratic method. That is to say, by asking questions. We did not become the authority. We simply mentioned that guessing is a valid way of solving a problem. And do you have something to add to that? I mean, so mathematics is not a precise language of nature. What about that?
I think the problem is that many people are taught that it is a precise science. It is not. I think this is where Tom Murray comes in with psychic and other things. It is time to expand mathematics as Einstein did. Again, we have to look at fields that we never even considered before or even thought of. And that's going to take some time. Now, if we haven't even advanced to that stage yet, how on earth did we get from these giant computer rooms to wristwatch-sized computers? You would need the technical assistance of a vastly superior culture, because we're a little bit, we're back in the European mathematical age with the exception of Einstein.
And as Dan was mentioning, one of the things that has to be taken into consideration, and Michael Crichton wrote about it, and it's a box office smash by Spielberg, is chaos.
Well, now, okay, so Dan, you and I agree that mathematics is not a precise language, just as the English language, the Spanish language is not a precise language either. And all of these things, languages that we're talking about, are human inventions. And as such, Since humans are not perfect, neither are their languages. Tom, since mathematics is not a precise language, as defined by both Dan and myself, and many other noteworthy scientists, what about that? Where do we go from there?
Well, I'm not sure where we go from there, but I did learn that for every fact or so-called fact that exists, it is always based on an assumption. So an assumption is an unprovable. So all things on this earth, including whether we exist or not, is based on an unknown assumption mathematically. And I think as a math teacher, you would agree with me that that's the foundation of mathematics?
Absolutely. It is. I am unable to accurately prove that the four of us exist right now. So, since that is the case, just about anything goes.
Yeah, and getting back to say, if there's aliens, we can't disprove them, and in the field of logic, if you can't disprove it, the theory is that you have to accept it. And if you can't disprove psychic energy, the theory is you have to accept it. And if you accept it, you can then work with it. I remember, as Dan mentioned, when the Reagan proposals for what was called the Star Wars program, Strategic Defense Initiative, a lot of people said, well, it won't work. Well, it's based on things like antenna nets, solar and radio waves, laser beams, which are used every day of the week here on Earth. In some of the medical clinics, we use laser beams for eye surgery to remove things. So the average medical person is very familiar with the same type of technology that could be used in outer space. And it would probably work more efficiently in outer space because there's no atmospheric interference, there's no buildup of dust, and there's no close radiation interference of it from other machinery such as TVs, radios, etc. So there's a lot going on out there that we don't know about.
Well, let me ask you this, Tom, regarding what's out there in outer space. I want both of your opinions. My opinion, I think that we've spent over 365 days in space with the shuttle fleet. Now, I don't think they got monkeys and lemmings up there and they're testing how their bladders react or how water reacts in space. You do that on the first or second mission. In fact, you know how that goes on because you did that in X-15s in the 50s. My question is, all this money that's appropriated, NASA is more or less considered a black program, and I think that SDI, if you look at it, originally it was supposed to shoot down Soviet ICBMs, incoming Soviet ICBMs. I think that it was put up, and the Soviets didn't necessarily fund it, but their space knowledge. The Soviets, I consider more in the forefront as far as space technology, as far as orbiting things around our Earth, as far as planets in our solar system, we're the champion of that information. But as far as things going around this planet Earth, the Soviets are in control, although there are a lot of spooks that would say our recce birds, our spy satellites, are much more accurate than the Soviet satellites, and I would have to agree with them. But what I'm saying is that we have operative Star Wars SDI.
What I would like to say is that I agree with you, and I pointed something out. I went to show my landlady out in Berlin. This is why I moved out to Berlin, was to get a better view of the sky. There's less interference of pollution. And I counted this light. I learned how to spot satellites in the Air Force. And I saw what I thought was a satellite. Now, I can tell the high-flying plane from a low-flying one and whatnot. And this thing went across the sky so fast and was so high up that there was no way that this thing was anything less than the spy plane. Now, probably one of the longest and rather drawn-out movies around is The Right Stuff. Great movie with a lot of facts in it. The whole purpose of the main character on The Right Stuff was to leave this planet on a jet fighter. And he never, up to the point of that movie, succeeded. I now have information available that this has been accomplished. We now can leave orbit in a fighter jet. And it's a secret fighter, a new one, and the ability to do it is now there. So the U.S. government is moving forward despite obstacles. Anybody can say whatever they want about whatever subject. What I'm trying to say is it's time for people to stop thinking about their individual concerns so much like, my country's better than yours. We got to start thinking as a planet. We got to start working as a planet. We got to start building on our strengths rather than saying everybody's the same. Everybody's not the same. We all have different strengths, and it's time we spend time working on that. Every day we waste, something else is moving against us. AIDS is just a preliminary event of what can happen when people don't expand.
Okay, well, Dan, it would appear that, let's assume for the moment, and I know you don't agree with this, but let's assume for the moment that all humans are created equal, but that they simply do not develop equally. And I think you would agree, whether you agree with my first statement or not, you would certainly agree with me, I think, that not everybody is as intelligent as everybody else. That there appear to be white-collar thinkers, as it were, and blue-collar thinkers, those who do not grasp certain subjects. And having said that, Tom, Dan, what do you think about that? I mean, okay, if we're able to do the kind of things that you've been talking about, a fighter plane can leave the atmosphere and then come back in, I mean, we haven't been doing this without help from outside sources. And so, what about that genetic experiment you were talking about? We're not all equal. Some of us are better thinkers than others. What about that?
The reason why goes back to what I originally said, that we're not from one experiment. We're from three different planets. This is what people have to understand. Yes, we're based upon a similar DNA structure. You have to be in order to live on this planet. That's the only reason why. They had to take a base DNA and they had to work from that. Each of the different cultures that were here.
And so the human race is a combination of three different experiments, and therefore we all have different intelligence levels.
Not so much intelligent levels, but abilities, size, looks, strengths, coloring, languages, ways of thinking. An Oriental person does not think the way a European person thinks at all.
And so, okay, so what are the three different races then?
Well, I believe it's Asian, Caucasian, and black race.
Go on.
All others are intermixes of those three races.
And what are the Tom, perhaps Tom Murray, our resident psychic healer here, can shed some light on this, but what are the three prevailing differences between the three races that Dan has pointed out?
Well, on the psychic end, I'm going to disagree and agree at the same time, in which usually we feel that there's actually 5 races on Earth. I don't know if they descended from, say, 3 groups into a total of 5, or 5 appearing at the same time. But we are given that there are 5 groups, so you could say 5 Adams and Eves and 5 Gardens of Eden. And that wouldn't contradict the Garden of the Bible, the Koran, or any other book in existence that's written before 2000 BC. The other thing is, as Dan is mentioning on genetic experiments, genetically, the DNA is the root core of information exchange at the 3-dimensional molecular level. And I keep on coming back to the world of matter. Matter is a different manifestation of energy. It's a solidified, dense form of energy information. But what makes all that DNA create you, me, trees, everything else in the earth? There has to be some form of intelligent organization, intelligent thought form, which is not 3-dimensional, which can't be measured by any machine. In fact, the only thing we can measure from a machine is the calories, the energy put off by the electrical circuitry of the brain, just like you measure the heat from the radiator or the heat given off by your TV when it's playing. But how does all this information work together? There has to be some kind of what you could call an invisible energy force or being force, or perhaps alien being force, regulating all that information and controlling it. So that I believe that we are bigger than our physical selves, that there's elements of our matter that will always exist. I don't know if we come from a different place, a different time in the solar system, but I definitely know that this whole structure has to be controlled by some force. The other concept is the earth the construction of God, or is it the construction of our own beings before we became matter? And what was the medium of construction decided to be built on the earth? And it appears to be that the DNA would be the smallest visible complex structure that we would organize. And you have to look at the subatomic particle structure, quarks, quarks, what are called quantum physics. And one of the contradictions in quantum physics that's accepted by physicists as a fact is that certain molecules can be in two places at once, or that you can be faster than light, because after all, you're a part of light, or that thoughts can be instantaneous. Therefore, if something is instantaneous, it has no past, present, or future. So you have to start looking into, again, from the small end, from the microscopic end, as Dan's saying, maybe from the macroscopic or the huge end, are the things going on that are controlling us, perhaps by our own will, or perhaps another will, that we don't know about.
Okay, this is very interesting, Tom, about the idea that we as physical beings made up of matter are the children of beings that are not made of matter, beings that have to turn themselves into matter just to make us. And that's a very interesting thought. And I wanted to turn to Dan. Tom, you have something to add?
Well, yes, as we were saying, these beings that have to create matter to be that have to create matter to be visible to us. From the psychic end, some people call them ghosts, but spirits, spirit matter, spirit manifestation. And as Dan mentioned, from the aspect of space travel, spaceships and so forth. Dan, did you have an insight on that?
Okay, but I think where the conversation is starting to go is we're starting to go away from the whole alien creating life on Earth and so forth. And let's assume for the moment that actually happened. But I think where Tom's conversation just a moment ago was leading us to is another tangent, which is quite appropriate here for this show. And if you're just tuning in, this is Omnibus Unlimited. I'm Laurence, Nobile, independent researcher and host of Omnibus Unlimited. We're joined by Tom Murray, psychic healer and medical technician from the Columbia Medical Associates in Boston. Dan Murray, independent researcher from Berlin, Massachusetts, and our own producer of Omnibus Unlimited, John Horrigan. And again, we started this episode talking about alien races seeding this planet and creating the human race, and such is not an inconceivable notion. If one thinks about the Greek gods, that could very easily have been a band of aliens simply impressing the hell out of the local inhabitants. But what about the creation of the universe, gentlemen? Let's leap beyond simple aliens. I mean, let's forget about simple aliens for a moment. What about the creation of the universe? Was there a creation of the universe? Is the Big Bang, in fact, the answer? Is the universe eternal? Now, we only have a few moments left. I know we only have about 5 or 6 minutes left in the show. 5 minutes left. Dan, let's start it off with you. What about the universe? Where did the universe come from?
I have no idea, but let's remember something. The people that form these theories and teach us these theories and give us these theories can only see so far. And they can only make judgment upon as far as they can see. And a lot of these same people are ignoring the very facts of the things around them, which angers me very much. We went from creationism to evolution to Big Bang. But my question is, what was there before Big Bang? Is there a God? I personally think so. Most people don't. A lot of people don't. So, where we came from and stuff, to me, at this point of view, is irrelevant. But let's look at this fact. Go along with the Big Bang theory. There was a Big Bang. Is there other Big Bangs going on somewhere else, much further out? I have no idea. But if you go by the Big Bang, and from what they've managed to measure so far, using mathematics, is that the universe is expanding. In other words, it's moving outward from this central area. That's the Big Bang theory. If this is true, these aliens are closer to the core would have developed before us. Therefore, they would be much more advanced. And that's where we should be concentrating our research into. And that's where the current research, if you notice, is into. And I think that is where as Tom said, macroeconomics, you can look for it in microeconomics, but I prefer the macro. Let's look where it's coming from right now. And the longer we spend on this planet, the less we're going to be able to see. We need to get off.
Okay, and this is good. This is the conversation's heading in the right direction. The Big Bang has obvious flaws, which I will expound upon in our later show, which will be the next show. As a matter of fact, this show, we only have 2 or 3 minutes left in this show, so this show will spill over into our next show, which is not uncommon for Omnibus Unlimited. But Tom, you wanted to add to something to what Dan just said.
Well, again, Dan, coming from the psychic end, and Larry, as you're saying, the scientific world looks at it as a Big Bang theory. You have yin and yang in the Oriental culture. The yang is the explosive, expanding energy. The yin is the quiet, holding energy. Yang could be masculine. Yin could be feminine. If you have chaos or nothingness or blackness, you have the yin. Then you have that explosive Big Bang theory, the yang. So if you go back to Lao Tzu and Taoism, you have the Big Bang theory. So a book written several thousand years ago agrees totally with what the current scientific theory is. You also have that same thing coming from Genesis. In the beginning there was nothing, and then there was light. Well, nothing is yin, and light is yang. A big explosion. And if you look at the ancient Hindu writings, or if you look at the ancient African writings, you again get this theory of this cold yin force and then an explosive yang force. And as you mentioned, if the universe is expanding, it will eventually expand to a point that it has to contract and come back again.
Okay, and I can see everybody sort of edging at their seat, waiting to get in the next comment, but we don't have any more time. We'll have to save this for the next show, and gentlemen, we will pick this up on our next show, the creation of the universe, where it possibly came from, and so forth. I'm Laurence, Nobile, host of Omnibus Unlimited. I would like to thank Tom Murray, psychic healer and medical technician from the Columbia Medical Associates in Boston. Thanks for being here tonight, Tom.
Thanks, I'm glad you had me, Larry.
And I'd like to thank Dan Murray, independent researcher from Berlin, Massachusetts. Dan, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, and it was a pleasure to be here.
And of course, I'd like to thank our producer, John Horrigan, for being here. John, thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
This is Laurence Nobile, independent researcher. Omnibus Unlimited is a production of the Crescent Moon Club. Thank you for your attention. Good night and good luck.